This is Sri Hari, your host for today. We have an exciting show today. We have Dr. Swamy on with us in the studio. So good morning or good afternoon or good evening wherever you are. We will start the show right away without much delay. And thanks Srikanth for the introduction. So we can jump on to the questions with Swamy. Dr. Swamy, good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Okay, thank you very much for joining, sir. I know you are one of the busiest men in the country, but thanks for sparing your time with us.
Yeah, that's fine, no problem.
Sir, today we will be talking primarily about the 2G spectrum because there has been a lot of activity and maybe in a positive way, but we want to hear from you.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
we have seen biggest scam surfaced in last 2 years, and we are still seeing them. So, could you tell us what is the significance of 2G spectrum, and especially you are more interested in 2G scam, unearthing the 2G scam than anything else. So, why is this such an important thing?
Well, first of all, the loss to the nation by deliberate, deliberately low pricing and then enabling companies which got the spectrum at a very low price to sell it to foreign companies at 8 times or 9 times the price they paid the government. Meant both that the country lost revenue because it didn't auction the spectrum, and it also meant that those companies which were lucky in getting this spectrum were able to make huge windfall profits. I would estimate that perhaps the total loss to the country was about $40 billion, and about $12 billion would have been the bribe amount, which was shared amongst 4 or 5 people. So, if you have that kind of money in the hands of politicians, then you are likely to find a situation where the democratic process would be subverted. Of course, this kind of money also has impact on the economy. Because much of this money is that remains in India and doesn't go abroad. That part which remains in India is spent usually on property, which means the property prices go up and a bubble builds up. And then this also spent on luxury goods, which means that the rate of return on investment in luxury goods production becomes several multiples of what you can by producing goods like cloth and shoes and things like for the common man. So it distorts your the priorities, investment priorities, in favor of a very small, in favor of a very small group. Then also financial derivatives have been devised to enable money that is sent abroad to come back into India in the form of derivatives, which is called in India as participatory notes, and that is part of the hot money stream that comes into the country and goes to the stock market and completely destabilizes it. So we have these kinds of impact, and then of course this cash enables, in view of the new legislation permitting forward trading in food grains and agriculture products. It enables to create an artificial scarcity in agriculture products and therefore inflation, which affects the poor people very badly. So in a number of ways, money that is earned by corruption goes to not only destabilize the politics, but it also destabilizes the economy. And that is why this is such an important matter. Of course, spectrum is a scarce resource. The rate at which our telecom services are growing, and consequently it should be priced according to the market. And that was not done. This is why it's important.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for explaining in a multifold scam this one. Supreme Court has, the biggest news is that Supreme Court asked government to cancel the 2G spectrum allocation and auction it again.
Yes.
Then Sibal said, Mr. Sibal said that going forward they will scrap the first come first serve and they will only do the auctioning for everything. So is it pending that the corruption charges yet to be, the people who are corrupt, they still need to be put in jail. Some of them are, but there's still things going on. But pending that, from a financial irregularity perspective, is this good? Is this a logical conclusion of how things should be, or is there more to come?
But more has happened in the 2G spectrum scam cases than has happened in any others so far. And it's taken much less time. In fact, the FIR was registered only in the specific names of people sometime in December last year. And it's already now, we are into, it's in about a year, December of, 2010. And so it's about a year and more. And we have now in a stage where charges have been framed. And the trial has begun in full swing. So by the end of this year, we should have all the convictions in place. So there is certainly a great deal of progress. But the people who were really the patrons of the present people in jail, they have yet to be caught. And that process is on. One of them is, of course, Mr. Chidambaram, who is the Union Home Minister. And I was not successful in the trial court to get him to be made an accused. But then that's not surprising because the other things which I won in the Supreme Court are also things which I lost in the lower courts and got it all overturned in the Supreme Court. So I am now gone to the Supreme Court, and I'm hoping that he would also be made a co-accused. And then we'll go on to some other names after that.
Okay, thank you, sir. Throughout this show, we'll also be taking questions from the listeners. So we have Vineet from California. Vineet, are you on the air? He's not yet. Raja and Kanimoli and some others are behind the bars, and you mentioned there's still more to come. May I ask who knew about 2G spectrum case, this misallocation?
Well, it's a question of knowing a lot of that number of people knew, but the issue is to what extent is the criminal responsibility or criminal culpability of these people. And in the case of Raja, well, he was a decision maker, and so he obviously is clear. In case of Kanimori, she received part of the bribe, so that's her case is clear. Marwan is oblique, but he is also one of the people who's, in the due process, because he used his office to ensure that a license given by one of the Indian entrepreneurs is handed over to Malaysian, who of course had LTT links, so that makes it even worse. So the same thing with Mr. Chidambaram, because he was empowered by a cabinet decision to decide the price the spectrum should be charged in jointly with Raja. So if Raja has been charges are framed against him, it's obviously simple logic to assume that Mr. Chidambaram should also be at least prima facie held guilty. This is up to so much. Then the people talk about the Prime Minister. Well, Prime Minister, certainly you can say that he didn't function as a Prime Minister, but that won't make it a criminal case. That will make it a civil malfeasance of inviolate duty, that kind of thing. But that's a smaller charge, and it's not something that can be easily proved. There's no doubt that the Prime Minister, if he was the Prime Minister in the normal sense of the word, he would have ensured that this didn't happen. But there is, in the present scheme of things, the unfortunate that there's someone more powerful than the Prime Minister, and that is Sonia Gandhi. And it is her patronage which is responsible for this scam. And so ultimately the buck stops with her.
Okay, Vineet, can you ask your question?
Yes, just wanted to thank Dr. Swamy for all he has done for all Indians abroad. My question to Dr. Swamy is, Dr. Swamy, when will India have a conservative right-wing news channel, just like Fox News here in the U.S.? When I listen to Indian news channels, when I read the newspapers, all I see is liberal left-wing propaganda everywhere that favors the Congress Party. Thank you.
Well, left politics is a legacy, and it's a good thing that slowly it is fading out. I think the government in which I was Commerce Minister and Law Minister was the first government which was, one could have said, there is a I wouldn't say conservative, but certainly right of center. We were the government which originally formulated the economic reforms, although the implementation of it was done by Mr. Narasimha Rao of the successor government. But also the government in which I was, which Mr. Chandrasekhar was Prime Minister, we were the first government in the history of India to actually permit U.S. Air Force planes to refuel in India with Gulf War I. And so there were a lot of changes that were made, which then sort of became mainstream changes later on. So I think the trend is clearly towards market, democracy, freedom. These are the trends in India. And it has got deep roots in India. There was an attempt to disrupt the democratic structures during the state of emergency in 1975 to 77, but Mrs. Gandhi learned a very bitter lesson, and I think since then the question of democracy is never raised again. Now, we have still remnants of the left wing in India. Some of it, of course, is migrated to the United States, so you can see many of the left-wing Indians living in the United States. So we have rid of them. But in the verbology, or rather the verbiage, and in the terminologies, is still left-dominated. The universities are still left-dominated, and they've become part of the liberal network abroad. So they have a self-sustaining basis. Now, on to your question about whether it's possible to look forward to a conservative, right-wing nationalist party. Yes, the elements are all there. It's a question of putting it together. Sometimes an event crystallizes that. I'm quite certain that during this decade we will have something on those lines that you think of.
Okay, thank you, Vineet. Sir, there is a question from Santosh on our NRISamay.com chat. So he is asking about the Chidambaram case. The trial court has denied, and then you moved Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So he was asking whether there is any corruption in the judiciary itself, and he was wondering why trial court has rejected the case.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a bad order, and it's not unusual to get a bad order at one stage and win in a higher stage. It's happened to me in the license cancelling case when the Delhi High Court didn't agree. Then it happened in the sanction case too, where the Delhi High Court didn't agree, and I had to go out. And I think this one will be easier to set aside because I'm somewhere feeling that the judge in writing the judgment seemed to have been reluctant to deny me my prayer, which is to make Mr. Chidambaram a co-accused. So in a sense, what we find is that out of the 70 paragraphs in the order, 68 paragraphs are more or less confirmation and support and agreement with what I have said. And in particular that the judge acknowledges that I brought documents on record to show that there was a meeting of minds between Chidambaram and Raja, that indeed Chidambaram and Raja together decided the price should be so low, and that indeed Chidambaram and Raja decided together that the companies, even before they roll out their services, be allowed to sell the controlling shares of their company to foreign companies. So in all these aspects, he has agreed with me. But then he goes on to say something which is wrong, and that is that I nevertheless could not prove that Chidambaram did it with a criminal intention. Now, in a murder, and of course in his support, he has quoted Supreme Court judgments, they are all murder cases. And in murder cases, certainly intention is very important. But in corruption cases, the Supreme Court itself, in a constitutional bench judgment, has held that the intention, or what in legal term is called mens rea, that is not necessary. So if you can show liability, that's sufficient. Now, the Prevention of Corruption Act, which is separate from the criminal Indian Penal Code, that Prevention of Corruption Act says that it is an offense, and it's an offense of corruption, if while in public office, you allowed somebody to earn windfall gains which are not in the public interest. So here in the case of Swan Telecom and Unitech, for example, being allowed to sell to two blacklisted companies, one is Etisalat and the other is Telenor. And then by the way, Telenor, because it's connected to Huawei, is not allowed entry into the United States for a variety of national security reasons. Here too, our Home Ministry, of which Mr. Chidambaram is the minister, itself had objected to any business being allowed for these companies, these two companies. And the Prevention of Corruption Act, Section 13 says that if while in public office you allowed companies which don't deserve and allowed somebody to make a sale where you earn windfall profits, then that is an act of corruption. Now, it doesn't matter whether the minister had the intention to allow these people to make that money. It's enough if it has happened. So that's called liability. And that's where the judges made a big error. And I'm sure that the Supreme Court will see the wisdom of what I'm saying.
Okay, thank you, sir. We have a listener asking us a question on facebook.com/NRISamay. So Rajani from New Jersey, she says common people seem to be more acceptable these days with corruption. They don't seem to be really worried because at some time or other, even they are in some way or other involved, either by giving a bribe or making things easier for themselves. So how can powerfully and effectively create an awareness and eradicate corruption in a long term?
I think Mr. Rajani has lived too long in the United States. Things are quite different here. And there was an election in Tamil Nadu where the only issue was 2G spectrum scam. And Karunanidhi had the DMK party had offered 6,000 rupees per vote, which meant a family of 5 would get 30,000 rupees. It was a lot of money for them. But these people took the money and voted against Karunanidhi. So consequently, that's one. Now we are going to see another election. Of course, we saw Bombay Corporation, which is an important, although it's just a corporation, but Bombay Corporation budget is bigger than many state government budgets. And there too, we saw the Congress defeated for the same reason. And I'm pretty sure that now in these 5 states, the Congress will get a drubbing in many states. And the UP being the biggest, I think they will do pretty badly there. They may end up 4th of the 4 major parties. So it's quite incorrect. It's like kind of a glib generalization which we find our educated people making. The common people are not concerned with these things. We were told that in the emergency also. Common people are not interested in democracy. They want bread and butter, that sort of thing. We found that, in fact, the common man wanted democracy, and they voted out Mrs. Indira Gandhi for that purpose. So I would say it's not correct at all. In fact, I have to persuade these educated people who are constantly articulating why, this is not this and this is not that, and why, we have to take an overall view, why corruption is greased money, that sort of thing, it's greased up things, all these kinds of things. I have a more bigger problem persuading our educated people than the common man. The common man is really fed up with the kind of harassment he suffers by corruption.
Okay, thank you, sir. So you know about the legalities probably more than anybody else. You are not a big proponent of Janlokpal Birala Rokpal. You say that with the current existing laws, it's possible to bring people behind the bar. So could you elaborate on this, sir?
Well, you see, the thing is that what Mr. Anna Hazare and his team have been saying is that unless you bring in a change of this law and the law that they designed called Janlokpal Bill, which is a counter or an alternative to the government's Lokpal Bill, nothing can be done by way of corruption. Now, that has disproved. I also shown that some of the things that they want to bring about in the new bill, I've already got it through the Supreme Court. For example, the question of sanction to prosecute, where the word sanction, the instrument of sanction is used to filter which subsequent prosecution will be allowed and which will not be allowed, and in the process delayed the prosecution of corrupt officials. So that has been now amended thanks to my court case. So I would think that the best combination would be, yes, we need sharper and well-defined laws, smoother, simpler laws. But while that may be our goal, we should still try to do things within the present system. Now, there is now a tendency, starting with this Tahrir Square agitation in Egypt, to get changes done through the streets. And I don't think that in a democratic country we need to do that. And that's where my disagreement is with. I have very high personal regards for Anna Hazare because I've been associated with Maharashtra because I was a Lok Sabha MP from Bombay for 2 Lok Sabha terms. So I know Bombay well, and I know him well, and he's a man of great integrity and very sincere. But his team is essentially left-wing, and left-wing means disruption. And I think that focus, that priority that they have is something not acceptable to me.
Okay, thank you, sir. I don't know if our listeners remember or not, but you have extensively worked on the foreign policy, both Indo-China and Indo-Israel, and you have been part of the ministry. You are probably the only one who actually, Mr. P.V. Narasimha Rao, when Congress party was in power, they appointed you as a minister from a non-ruling party. So could you please...
I was not even an ally.
Yeah, so that's amazing.
I wasn't even an ally. Yeah.
Could you tell us the Indo-China relationship? Mr. Sharath has been asking about this, and what is one thing you would say India should emulate from China in government functioning and democracy? How is the relationship right now when compared to a couple of decades back?
I don't think there's anything in China that I would like to emulate. You see, that doesn't mean I'm not appreciative of some of the things they've done. But, we are a different system, they are a different system. So the question of emulation is very difficult to translate what the Chinese do to what we can do in our system. So I will not go into that part, but I would say this, that China is our neighbor, and we have had almost 2,500 years of peace without a single incident till 1962. And this is unprecedented in world history because everywhere else, neighbors have been quarreling for long years. In Europe, it was an extreme case, you see, where every neighbor fought with every other neighbor and bloody wars and conquest and so on. Now, we are the only country we are the only 2 countries who are neighbors along a long border, and we didn't have a conflict. Now, that doesn't mean that today we should do the foolish thing that Jawaharlal Nehru did, is to say, no, we are brothers and sisters of China. I don't think in a world policy, in a country's national security policy, we can take this kind of emotional approach to the problem. I would say we should differentiate between the goals of a defense policy for a country and foreign policy for a country. Defense policy, we look at the other country's capacity. Does it have capacity to inflict harm on us? Then we must develop that capacity and counter capacity to counterweight that. And so we never should let down our guard in dealing with any country, however friendly it is. And the second is foreign policy, where we can go by intention. So the Chinese want to collaborate on environment, we can collaborate on that. The Chinese want to collaborate on any problems of Asia, we can collaborate on that. So if the Chinese are in a friendly mood, we can do it. But at the moment, we have some fundamental questions to settle. We have a border problem that needs to be settled. We have a problem of dealing with Pakistan. China is the main benefactor. I mean, in fact, the United States may give the impression of having a lot of say in Pakistan, but I think it's the Chinese who really have complete, they have their way on everything that they want. Consequently, these are some of the issues to be done. And we need, therefore, to make it clear to China that hostile India is much worse for them than a friendly India. And therefore, a friendly India is possible only if there's an accommodation. And we should work for that. And I personally was responsible for the thaw that began between India and China in 1977, after the Janata Party came to power. And Mr. Morarji Desai asked me to represent him as his emissary, go to China and see whether there's any possibility of an accommodation. And that's how it started. Then I was able to persuade them to reopen the Kailash Mansar route for the Hindu pilgrims, and the Chinese did it, even though they're a communist country. They agreed, and so every year people go to Kailash and Mansarovar for pilgrimage, and that's going uninterrupted no matter what happens. And the process has gone on to a point where I think both China and India do recognize that some jockeying and posturing can take place, but in the end, we should be friendly. I would think in the long run, United States, China, India really constitute a triangle. And that triangle ought to become a strategic triangle, one of cooperation rather than competition. This is how I view relations. I would like to have friendly relations with China if possible.
Okay, sir. Recently, the court has said that police acted over-enthusiastically in evacuating Baba Ramdevji's camp last year.
Yes.
Then AK, I don't know where he's from, he's a listener. He was asking, with so many challenges lined up the current environment, is thinking, is there a repeat of an emergency rule showing up? What is your assessment?
Well, it would be a foolish thing to do for any government after what happened to the last emergency. I would doubt it, because I don't think it's any more a homogeneous system. At that time, Mrs. Gandhi was the only leader. Today, Sonia Gandhi may give the impression of being a big leader or the Sarvoch of the Congress Party. But, the institutions are no more compliant. At that time in the emergency, even the Supreme Court is very compliant. And all the other institutions of democracy were very compliant to Mrs. Gandhi. But today that's not so. I mean, there's, people stand up and they raise questions. You had the Commander-in-Chief of the Indian Army going to court to decide whether his birth date was the correct one or the one that the government was saying was the correct one was the correct one. So we find people raising questions. We find opposition parties in many states in power. The whole situation is totally different. I don't think that any leader would be so foolish as to declare an emergency. They can try to undermine. There is a process of undermining, because this corruption has made us all vulnerable to blackmail. And so a large number of people get scared to oppose the government. That has to change, and that's the only part that's depressing about the present situation.
Okay, sir, moving to the politics side, you are the president of Janata Party, national parties.
Yes.
How are the prospects, and how are you going to fight the biggest parties? And there's a question from Jaydev Menon. He was asking, when is your party going to officially join NDA?
Well, the NDA is quite imminent, I would say. It's not an easy thing. You see, the question is, I have a record of not being a person who can be easily digested. And that means they will have to make room for me, and making room for me, naturally, those who are in entrenched positions don't like it. And so, but I have the good fortune of a very enthusiastic support from the RSS, the Vishnu Parishad, and most important of all, the sadhus and sannyasis of India. And they really think that the way I articulate the values for the country, particularly the renaissance I would like to see in Hinduism, so on, they are very appreciative of that. So there is a lot of support for that. And then added to it is this great appreciation that has emerged in the country for the fight I'm putting up on corruption. So I think I would be an asset as a campaigner. Although I do believe the historic party is the Janata Party. That's the party which brought democracy back to India. But it got depleted by all these splits. And now, after a long time, I've started the process of contesting elections. The first election will be in Kerala, on a place called Piravam, which is in Ernakulam district, and the nominations are going on just now, and the polling results will come around the 17th to 18th of March. And I find a lot of youngsters, particularly young, educated youngsters, they are wanting to join wherever I go. So I'm decided to do what Obama did, namely put it online and deal with everybody on online basis. And if I can set up structures around the country of these young professionals who don't need to make money in politics, but have enough to be able to do politics in spare times, that kind of crowd, a new breed of politicians, if I can put that together in the next 2 years, then I'll be all set to become a factor in my own right in terms of numbers in the next parliament. So I think that then I would, of course, have a great catalytic effect. In the past, I've been a minister by just being a single MP of Janata Party. And by sheer articulation of views, most people have not even thought about the issues. I was able to have the stamp of my thinking put on all the big parties. For example, economic reforms. Hardly anybody had any clue because they're all so socialistic in the past. But I was all ready for it, and that's why Narasimha Rao was compelled to invite me to occupy the ministerial cabinet minister's post. And so that is the way forward, I think. I think ultimately, of course, we should amalgamate the existing parties to bring it down to a minimum of maybe 3, if not 2. And one should be right of center, the other should be left of center. And that process, I think, is going on, and probably another 5-6 years, you will probably find that happening.
Okay, sir. Just a follow-up. So you talked about supporters, building a support base. I think you have a lot of supporters in, especially NRI community, because I'm trying to catch up with all the questions I'm getting. So Sunil Shioran, he asks if there is any organization associated with you in NRIs, where NRIs can join and support you.
Well, I have not yet floated, say, anything connected with Janata Party, but I have worked with 2 organizations quite closely. One is an organization which is called the Kanchi Forum, which is the moving stage, and I call Guruvai Vipan, and there's some colleagues, able colleagues like NRISamay and others. So that's one group. Then I have worked closely with the Indian American Intellectual Forum, Kararia, Vishani, and Prasad Yalavanchi, and so on. And then there's been, for me, there's always a fallback position in the people who are connected with the Hindu movement in the United States, such as Hindu Sevak Sangh or Vishwani Parishad and so on. So, and then of course they have these temples which also provide a network. But in terms of politicizing it, I don't know, I'm not too sure, because when you talk about Indians, you can include both citizens of India as well as American citizens with the PIO status or the OCI status. And therefore, when that kind of mixed crowd comes, then, you really can't interfere the internal affairs of either India or the United States. So maybe on issues, there can be a single forum, and I am coming back for one of these two programs in the United States. I'm thinking of basically using the new platform that we have created in India of very high-powered intellectuals called the Action Committee Against Corruption in India. And there we certainly need help, because a lot of data is available in the United States and Europe, and that can be of use to us in India. And we need that, and I certainly need it in Europe too, and especially Italy, where many of the secrets of India can be found there. So I would like to see that some people get recruited in Italy who can interact with their government and get out these facts and let us know. There's an investigation going on in Italy for bribes paid to helicopter purchase, bribes paid to Indians, Indian officials for helicopter purchase and other such things. It's difficult sitting here to expect newspapers to ferret it out. So we need at least 4 or 5 people in Italy who can, on a phone call, be able to provide us with this material. So I got that in mind, but at the moment there are enough organizations that I don't want to duplicate it. But if some kind of an umbrella organization can be created, which will take up these hard issues, because most of the other umbrella organizations in the United States are cultural bodies. So we need a kind of a semi-political or social-political umbrella body.
Okay, sir. So if people are interested to either join in your organization in India or outside, what is the email ID or
the best way is to go to the website www.acaci.in, and you will get an online facility for becoming a member.
Okay, thank you, sir. So one of the things that came out, your article in DNA about the wiping out the Islamic terror, and there is a lot of positive and also negative comments about it, and it was one of the widely discussed, I guess. Then Harvard first said that they would respect your freedom of speech, but I think they suspended your classes. Do you regret any part of the article, or can you give?
No, there's nothing for me to regret. I wrote this article in India as a political figure. I didn't say I was writing it as a professor at Harvard. See, I wrote it as a president of the Janata Party, and I made it right from 1971 when I entered politics, when I was in India. When Harvard kept asking me to come back, I said I'll come back, but make it very clear that whatever politics I do in India, that cannot be an issue, you see. And Harvard has always respected that. And I also respected Harvard in the sense I never dealt with political issues in my class. And that's why this year too, when they terminated or deleted my course, it was the Department of Economics which proposed my name. And normally at Harvard, in the faculty, when the department proposes a person to teach a course, it is accepted, you see. And if there was any charge against me or any article which hurt somebody or the other, then it should have been referred to me and asked for, my comments at least should have been asked. But it was decided behind my back. It was a very sneak attack for these departments of religion, which gets a lot of money from Saudi Arabia. And then this South Asia Institute, which is full of commies or communists. And that kind of what I would call as fringe intellectuals, they got together and created a quorum. And normally professors don't go to these university meetings where you only have to rubber stamp something. So it's small turnout, and there they had took a majority, insisted on a majority vote because it couldn't be unanimous. And then the majority vote of a very small group was able to dominate the vote, and that's how it got deleted. And I don't think Harvard discovered itself with glory because nobody seems to think that there's any odium, because just a few days ago, on the 16th of February, on an invitation from the Democratic Party, I flew to San Francisco to participate in that dinner hosted by President Barack Obama. And I was designated as a VIP, and I was the only foreigner at that dinner. So I don't think that anyone in the United States is very happy with what Harvard did. And it was, in fact, quite a disgraceful thing because it was done behind my back. And I, as a public person in India, was really doing it as a labor of love for Harvard by going for 2 months and teaching a class, teaching 2 courses. So these people with their Indian links, I know that some of them have Indian links, some of them are communists like Amartya Sen. These people have always been targeting me for a long time. So they misuse their position generally, and I'm sure that Harvard in the long run will correct itself. Till that time, I have nothing to say. As far as the article is concerned, I don't think anybody has objected in India except the Congress party, which wanted to make an issue. They couldn't find anything else against me. So they wanted to make out some kind of a communal or a sectarian person, but there's nobody who has objected in the broad masses of India. There's not been any demonstration. There's not been any letters to the editor. There's nothing of the kind. And Janata Party has quite a sizable number of members from the Muslim community. In fact, we are the only national party with a unit in Srinagar. No other party, of course, they're leaving aside Congress, which hangs on to the coattails of National Conference. There's no other party which functions in Srinagar. And so I don't know what this hoo-ha was about. I have some proposals. I can defend them. If anybody wants me to debate the DNA article, I'm ready to debate. But obviously they don't want to debate. That's why they're deciding behind my back.
Thank you, sir. We have a listener from NRISamay.com. He's asking about Narendra Modi. He says he's proved one of the most effective administrators. And do you think you will see him in the central government in the future?
These things are very difficult to predict, you see, because we have the road to central leadership is paved with a lot of dead bodies. So I'm not either. On that issue, I can't predict. But I would say that he has made a fundamental change to the way an economic administration should work in the state of Gujarat. And there are pluses and minuses, but this is a huge plus. And so that in a country which has so much poverty and so on, he has sort of inefficiency. He produced an efficient administration. He has his minus problems are that he has no time for the party. He is so engrossed in getting things done. And firstly, in the democracy, you have to have a party, and you have to interact with your party colleagues and others. and it maybe is also hypersensitive to criticism. So there are some of the minuses that he has. But as I say, that the overwhelming impression of producing a miracle in economic growth, that's what stands in his favor. And of course, I know him. He's an old friend of mine. We were in the early stages when Johnson was there. We were together. He was at that time in the RSS, but and there was a very close connection between Johnson and RSS in those days. So while personally having a very high opinion about him, I will say that it's difficult to predict about anybody who will become what in the future, because these things are part of destiny.
Okay, thank you, sir. On a lighter note, a kind of a personal question. So you play so many different roles. You are an economist, then you are an educator, and you are a president of a national party, and you are also a corruption crusader, and you also promote the Hinduism. So you play so many roles. How do you prioritize? What is the most priority? What stays on the top of your list, and how do you manage so many things?
Well, when I came first to India back from Harvard, I had an agenda of 5 items, and I would say 4 of them have already been achieved. And they've become mainstream demand. At that time, the people used to think I was nuts, I was crazy, I was right-wing fanatic, and all kinds of things, an American agent. God knows, I mean, these leftists were using every possible abuse they could think of. But one by one, I achieved it. For instance, I wanted socialism to go. Now, that is blasphemy in those days to speak against socialism. But socialism was gone. Then I wanted a foreign policy which is more balanced than being a junior partner of the Soviet Union. And now so there's no Soviet Union. So that's another thing that's changed. I wanted good relations with Israel. I wanted diplomatic relations established, and I was privileged as a minister to do it. And also be the first Indian politician to go on an official visit to Israel. And then I wanted a normalization with China, and that also has been achieved. Now, the only thing that is remaining is what I call the Hindu Renaissance. I'd like people to forget about all their regional and caste and all these petty divisions and treat themselves as Hindu and nothing else. And I certainly would think that if the Muslims and Christians accept what is the truth and what the science in terms of DNA structure, genetics has established, that is, the Muslims and Christians' ancestors are also Hindus. If they acknowledge that without any reservations, then I think we can all become part of one family. And nobody can say Muslims are outsiders and, they came with invaders and so on. They're as much Indians as we are. And so I'm really working on how to establish a vigorous identity for Indians, not just being a member of the Republic and having an Indian passport, but something more, something that connects you to the past and makes you look into the future too. That's the kind of thing, and I mean, these other things of what I do, they all become easily integrable in terms of my activities. And of course, I don't go to cocktail parties, I don't go and see cinemas, and so I got a lot of time.
Okay. Sir, online listener, his name is Vinit, he's asking about the education system in India. He's saying how to incorporate both liberal left and center and also right conservative values instead of just current liberal left, Nehruvian Marxist education system that produces traitors and anti-national among Hindus.
Well, first of all, the liberal left is all buncombe, you see. I mean, it's the most bankrupt ideology that one can think of. And for India, we have a long tradition in Sanatana Dharma, which means it's, life is not a one-dimensional pursuit of something. The communists and the socialists and even the capitalists, they have a one-dimensional approach to life. That make more money, make more profit, or maximize production, that kind of thing. It's that is all that they're concerned about. But Sanatana Dharma tells you that material prosperity is essential, but what is ideal, what decides your place in society is the spiritual attainment and your approach to values. And that's why in India, a leader who's half dressed or half undressed like Mahatma Gandhi could lead the country. Whereas in the United States, you will not be able to find a leader who's going in his underpants. You see, he'll be probably put in jail for indecent exposure. There, the leaders have to be very well dressed. The religious leaders, take for example the Pope, he's a very well dressed. He saw lots of diamonds and rubies and sapphire necklaces hanging around his neck, and it's all a satin gown. Whereas our spiritual leaders, they wear a very coarse bhua, that is the saffron cloth. So we have from very beginning elevated sacrifice to a very great height. And the other societies don't give that much importance to sacrifice. So I think what we need is an education system where the Indian values are emphasized. I went to the Indian Institute of Management in Ahmedabad to address the students, and I asked the students, why are you here? And all of them said, because they get a good job. I think probably in those 200 students who had come to attend my lecture, maybe 2, which means 1%, said that, well, I like the theory of finance, so I want to learn finance and how to administer it in business. That's why I'm here. So nobody told, I mean, leaving aside these exceptions, nobody spoke about the value of knowledge, that I'm coming for knowledge. But I'll get a good job, I'll get a high salary, fat salary, and probably own a Mercedes Benz. That kind of thing, it's a purely one-dimensional approach to life. And that I think our education systems are also teaching that they only teach cognitive intelligence. They don't teach emotional intelligence or spiritual intelligence or social intelligence and so on. And that is the area where I would like to bring reform in our education system.
Okay, thank you, sir. We have a listener on the call with us, Srikanth from Los Angeles. Can you please ask your question?
Hello, Dr. Swamy. Thank you for coming on air. My question is, Team Anna has been focusing on right to reject, and then they're asking it to be placed on the EVM, electronic voting machines. Do you think right to reject option that Team Anna is pursuing is a good tool to combat bad politics?
Yes.
Thank you.
No, I don't think so. I think it's an impractical thing because, the right to reject will be a very small fraction. Most Indians, by the time they go to the polling booth, they have already decided who they're going to vote for. And I don't think anyone will go to the polling booth if he wants just to reject everybody, except a few of these NGO types. I don't think anybody else would do it. Or not the right to recall. That's a most insane idea, if you ask me. And so our problem is not the system. Our problem is the necessity to create an ethos in our country that going into politics is a good thing. Now here, today the ethos is that going to politics is only if you're failed everywhere else or you're unfit for any other job anywhere else. Now that's the bane. And so we are creating a vacuum in which crooked men come in, and which is politics is the place where the power is maximum. And so power gets misused. So that's what I would like to change. People should have the adventurous spirit of coming into politics and wanting to come to politics. So that's all that I find is wrong with our system.
Okay, sir. We have a couple of people asking, Aditya Bajoria and others also asking, how soon will UPA government fall, whether it will happen this year?
Well, let me give you a scenario where it could fall early. And therefore, negation of that scenario means they won't fall early. In any case, the elections are due in another 2 years. What I would say is that what is expected of me, what I'm expecting is that the Congress will do very badly in these 5 elections. And as a consequence, they'll lose the numbers to get someone of their choice is elected as president of India. That's in July. After that, if the opposition gets its nominee as the president, then I think you will find that the midterm poll is around the corner. Then it will be very difficult for this government to continue.
Sir, we were talking about the DNA article about Muslim terrorism.
Yes.
I think there was a case filed against you about this article.
Yes.
Do you think that that has any potential, or do you think this is one way of trying to calm you down over the case?
It doesn't calm me down. It gets me angrier. Actually, there's no case filed against me. There's just what's called an FIR registered. And anybody can get an FIR registered if he goes and makes a complaint. So the National Minorities Commission, which is headed by a complete bluffer, I would call him a moron, this Habibullah, he exceeded his brief. He disregarded the advice of the Attorney General, who said there's no case. And I think he wanted to prove his loyalty to Sonia Gandhi. So he went and filed a complaint with the police. And then it took a lot of hammering from Mr. Chidambaram of the police commissioner to get it registered. Because originally when this complaint went to 3 police stations, they all rejected it. They said there's nothing in it. We will not register even a first information report, which is the very preliminary stage. But then Mr. Chidambaram was able to twist the arm of the police commissioner and didn't get a FIR was registered. Now, once the FIR was registered, the police has a right on the sections that were invoked for the FIR to take me into custody and put me in jail and then interrogate me inside jail. So I went to the court, Delhi High Court, and I said that this is a very frivolous case and my liberty can't be deprived on this basis. So the court gave me what is called a restraining order. And I think in some other countries it's called preemptive bail and things like that. But it's not bail. Bail is when you go to jail and come out on a assurance or a guarantee, monetary guarantee, that sort of thing. So I got a restraining order. The police said you can't arrest him. If you want to question him, no problem, but you can't arrest him. Now, when the police then invited me for what they said is to depose as a witness, they didn't even call me as an accused, because there was no basis to call me as an accused. So they called me as a witness. And asked me about the article. I pointed out that what I sent originally was a 4,000-page article with all the nuances built into it. And but the editor wanted a 1,500 page or 1,300 word op-ed page. So he cut out so many things that much of the meaning, got lost. And so I read it out to them what the original article said and what it appeared. And since then, I've not heard from the press, from the police. And if I do, I always go back to court. I mean, they're not faced in court, and I'll make mincemeat of them there.
Okay, sir. Couple of questions about Tamil Nadu. So, Kundalkulam nuclear plant, there is a lot of agitation outside, and recently, probably infamously, Prime Minister has said that there's a foreign money flowing into the agitation. But anyway, what do you think the concerns are real from the people? Do you think the Kundalkulam nuclear plant is necessary?
But as far as Kundalkulam is concerned, when last September when the agitation started, I said it very beginning there that there's nothing fishy about this agitation. Because I found a large number of padres and nuns organizing these sit-ins and distributing food and bringing people by trucks and things like that. Now, why would padres and nuns be interested in this kind of thing? So the first thing that he looked at, I then made my own investigation and said, and long before the Prime Minister said, that this is a foreign-inspired agitation, largely from Europe and some support from the United States. Now, before I go to the motive of why they would do that, let me say that this reactor which the Russians are building is probably one of the most advanced. It's much cheaper And the Russians are far more relaxed about the conditions of the suppliers, nuclear suppliers group. Therefore, it's a very good deal. And we were quite close to generating 2,000 megawatts of power capacity, which would have meant the Tamil Nadu electricity power cuts which we are having nowadays would have gone. But this agitation was probably because they felt that if the Russians establish here, then it's only the Russians all the way. And that, I don't think there's any serious worthy of notice, something that is worthy of notice on this question of danger from nuclear reactors. Of course, it has happened in Chernobyl, it has happened in 3 Mile Island in the United States, it's happened in Fukuoka, whatever the place in Japan. Yes, these design faults have been traced. But I think all our reactors, the amount of fail-safe for the margin of safety that is built in is extraordinary. And our scientists are very capable people. If they say it's a risk, small risk to take, then I think we need to take that risk. It's after all a clean way to generate electricity. But we have in India all the groups all the time raising about all kinds of things. In Kerala, for example, there's an extraordinary fear that the dam which is there might burst, and the Kerala might get flooded. This kind of fear is there, and so certain amount of risk is there everywhere.
Okay. Next question from a listener, sir. I know we asked for 1 hour and we just passed 1 hour. I hope you have 5 hours time. I know it's late in the night. So just a couple of questions, sir. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. One couple of questions, no problem.
We have a listener asking Anindaya Bhattacharya, his name. What is your opinion on mainstream media and either the partial or impartial role?
Well, you see, the mainstream media has all become a bit of a money-making thing. Because these advertisements are so tremendous that they make a lot of money. And once you make money, then if you're not in a mood to pay the due taxes, start avoiding them, then you become vulnerable to attack by the government. I know in the case of Mr. Chidambaram, he would send SMSs to the editors of mainstream media, saying that, for instance, on television media, I saw this at 6:30 p.m. news, and this is not the way you should be presenting the news. The way you should be presenting the news as follows: you better do what I say, or you will face difficulties, namely some income tax inspectors coming to your place. Now, that's the kind of way our media, mainstream media, is big terrorized. And, things which in the United States, for example, would be lead stories. For example, take Sonia Gandhi on an oath as a candidate. She swore that she had got a degree from the University of Cambridge in English language. Well, I produced a letter from the registrar of Cambridge University that there's never any such student called Sonia Gandhi or Sonia Maino, all the variations of his names, Antonia Maino, all these various names she has. I got them on each of those names as denial. And but the Indian media wouldn't publish it because they're scared that there will be retaliation. So that's the only problem with our media. It's very sophisticated in terms of how they speak and how the cameras take photos and so on. Advertisements are also very imaginative, but they cannot take on the government. That's basically what it is. They may take on lower parts of the government, but taking on Sonia would be taboo. They would not. For example, Sonia for cancer treatment. Not a word about it comes. It doesn't even come this much. A line that she left for the United States today for treatment of cancer was to take chemotherapy or something. But they will not put it out in the media. And why she went, where she stayed, which hospital, which doctor, which in the United States would be routine, or even Europe it would be routine, but not in India.
Okay, sir. One last question. We have a question from the listener, Shamal. He's asking about Justice A.K. Ganguly in his interview to Karan Thapar indicated that Supreme Court judges are an immense pressure. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Yes, well, certainly. I know for a fact that, these relatives of judges are not safe. If supposing something is being decided, they may not talk directly to the judges, but they can talk to the relatives of the judges and say, won't tell your relatives. They are. I mean, the stakes are very high. And, of course, with Justice Ganguly, as tough as they come. So there wasn't a problem with him. But other judges may not, even if they don't want to, because their families are targeted, their grandchildren are targeted, all kinds of offensive telephone calls come. So these are some of the things that the judges face. And I must say our judges also have to work very hard because in the United States Supreme Court, they won't take more than 200 cases a year. In Indian Supreme Court, they take up 300 cases per day. And, they all take briefs and you've got to read them and then give a measured judgment. So it's a lot of hard work. And I think, but still, given all that, the Supreme Court has made us proud.
Okay, sir, do you have any message you would like to give for our listeners before we wrap up the session?
I would say that whoever goes to America should study hard. We can't get better education than anywhere else in the world. Make the most of it, get some learning experience, build a certain level of bank account, and then return back to India.
Okay. Thank you, sir. We appreciate your time, and I hope you can come back on our show later.
Sure. Okay, bye.
Thank you. Good night. Friends, that was Dr. Swamy's call. We had a very interesting discussion, and we really thank you all for joining us today. I have to apologize. I still have a lot of questions from you that I couldn't ask because of the time limitation. I hope we'll bring Dr. Swamy back again, and we can ask you all participate to the same enthusiasm. Then, friends, if you have missed any part of this or if you want to listen to it again, the recording of this session will be available on NRISamay.com, NRISamay, and while you are there, please like us on Facebook. It's facebook.com/NRISamay, or you can go to youtube.com/NRISamay and you will find all our recording sessions we have done so far. All our shows are available there. We have done shows with Kiran Bedi, P. Sainath, and we also have done shows on farmers' issues. Then we brought in people who are not real heroes but untold stories also. Friends, we have exciting shows coming up, and we would love to hear back from you. So please do join us again next week, same time. That is India time, 9:30 p.m. IST, and then Eastern time is 11 a.m. IST every Sunday, friends. So please come back. And from the studio, thank you all. I'll give it back to Srikanth, our studio manager today. Thank you.
Thank you, Srihari Garu. It's an excellent show that we had today. We had a ton of questions, a flurry of questions coming in all on Facebook, on the chat messages. We are getting some messages on NRISamay.com. Friends, if we are unable to ask you a question because of shortage of time, Dr. Swamy was kind enough to cross over an hour and then answer all our questions. We will definitely take your questions and send it to Dr. Swamy if possible, and then get some answers. And if you haven't listened to any of our earlier shows, kindly go to youtube.com/NRISamay. We covered on many different topics. One is anti-corruption movement. We had conversations with Kiran Bediji, and we as well had covered some topics like farmers' issues. We had P. Sainath, the rural Hindu journalist who has done extensive study on why there are 250,000 of farmers who committed suicides. We had P. Sainath, we had Vandana Shivaji who came in on air earlier, and she was talking about how to reconnect a farmer, society, and the earth. That was a fascinating show. And our upcoming shows are with an NRI who returned back to India. He's 28 years old. His name is Bala Saheb Darade, and he was inspired by Anna's movement. He went back to India last August 2011, and he contested the BMC elections recently that happened in Mumbai, Maharashtra elections, and he won over MNS headed by Raj Thakreji, and then Shiv Sena headed by Uddhav Thakreji, and then MNS, and Sharad Pawar's party as well. And he won over. He won the election by over 60% of votes. There were 14,000 votes, and he got close to 7,500 votes. So next week will be Bala Saheb Darade. It's a fascinating story of a 28 years old guy who got inspired by Anna Hazare movement and then went back, contested the elections. He will be on air next week, Sunday, same time, 8 a.m. Pacific, United States time, 9:30 p.m. India time. So urge all of you to tune in again next Sunday, same time, to hear to Bala Saheb Darade. And we still have some upcoming shows. We are planning to get in Santosh Hegdeji very soon. We are looking out for the right time to bring in Santosh Hegdeji. And you all know that the recent awards that he has got, he has donated it for a great cause. He's a fascinating person who has proved that Lokayukta is definitely powerful. Many states don't have powerful Lokayukta, and right now in Andhra Pradesh, there's a huge movement going on to bring in a strong Lokayukta. And as you have seen, Santosh Hegdeji had proved to the world once again that if you have the will and vigor, you could definitely combat bad politics and corruption with Lokayukta. So we'll try to bring in Santosh Hegdeji very soon. So we are trying to bring in fascinating stories, unheard voices, and realistic perspectives from all good people around the world. So once again, listeners around the world, it was an honor having you all to the show, listening to the show wherever you are around the world. We are really happy we had Dr. Swamy here, who has answered all the questions as much as possible, and we will try to post in any further messages to him on his personal email, and if we hear back from him, we will definitely let you guys know. So thank you once again, and again tune in next week, Sunday, same time. Until then, please listen to this song. All right, friends. So that's it for today. I think you all had a good show, and hopefully you all will tune in again next week, same time. We'll have a fascinating story to tell you guys. It's about Balasaheb Darade, a man who's working in the United States at NASA as a contractor. He was inspired by Anna Hazare, and he'll be on air next week, same time. He was inspired by Anna Hazare. He went back, contested the BMC elections in Mumbai, in Maharashtra, very close to Vidarbha, a place where a ton of farmers have committed suicides. It's hit by farmers' problems, and he's surrounded by huge challenges ahead of him. And Balasaheb Darade was telling me the other day when we had a conversation that he is willing to fight until justice is done to people. So we'll have Balasaheb Darade next week, same time. Stay tuned, friends. From around the world, anywhere you guys have tuned in. This is NRISamay, and thank you all. A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you once again. Thank you. Bye.